There was once a boy who was praised for being quiet, polite, and endlessly agreeable. Teachers adored him because he never caused trouble. Family members admired his sweetness, his calm demeanor, his willingness to share. Other children might fight for the bigger slice of cake, but he would give it away without hesitation. To the outside world, he was the model child, but inside, there was something no one could see. A quiet storm of unspoken needs, unshed tears, and swallowed words. He carried the invisible weight of being the nice child. And maybe, in some way, you know this feeling too. Perhaps you grew up hearing phrases like, "Don't upset anyone," or "Be a good boy, be a good girl." Perhaps you felt loved most when you smiled, behaved, and didn't make demands. And without even realizing it, your identity began to form around being the one who keeps the peace, the one who doesn't trouble others, the one who always says yes. What does this do to a child's psychology? What happens when someone's sense of worth is tied to niceness? That's what we're about to explore together, and I promise you, once you see it, you'll start to notice it everywhere, not only in children but in adults who still carry the same patterns decades later. You see, the so-called nice child isn't born nice. No child arrives in this world automatically suppressing their wants. Babies cry when they're hungry. Toddlers throw tantrums when they feel unheard. Children naturally express themselves. Niceness, in the sense of self-denial, is learned. It's a survival strategy. It's the mind saying, if I am pleasing, I will be safe. If I am agreeable, I will be loved. Psychologists sometimes describe this as conditional love, when affection, attention, or approval is only given when a child behaves in certain ways. The child internalizes a message. I am valuable when I am easy to handle. I am lovable when I am not a problem. And so they begin to trim away parts of themselves, their anger, their boldness, their desires, in exchange for acceptance. But here's the paradox. What looks like niceness on the outside often hides fear on the inside. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of disappointing others. The nice child smiles not always because they feel happy, but because they fear the consequences of frowning. They give in not always out of generosity, but because they fear what will happen if they say no. And this is where the story becomes fascinating, because the same pattern that earns praise in childhood can create struggles in adulthood. The nice child grows into the nice adult, the one who never asks for a raise at work, the one who always says it's fine, even when it isn't, the one who swallows their true feelings for the sake of harmony. On the surface, they look kind, dependable, admirable, but inside they may feel invisible, unseen, quietly resentful. Let's open a curiosity loop here. Why is it that so many nice children end up anxious, burnt out, or secretly unhappy later in life? Why does the very trait that won them love and safety as children leave them struggling as adults? Hold that question for a moment, because the answer reveals something profound about human psychology. Think about the word nice. It sounds positive, doesn't it? But niceness isn't the same as kindness. True kindness comes from authenticity. It flows from someone who knows their worth and chooses to give freely. Niceness, on the other hand, often comes from fear. It's the performance of kindness without the freedom of choice. It's not, I want to help you, but rather, I must help you, or else I'll lose love. This is where the nice child begins to lose themselves, because in order to always be nice, they must silence parts of who they are. They learn to ignore the anger that signals injustice. They bury the sadness that needs comforting. They dismiss the desires that make them human. Slowly they stop asking, what do I want? And start asking, What do you need from me? And little by little, they trade authenticity for acceptance. But human beings cannot thrive without authenticity. Suppressed emotions don't vanish, they linger. Silenced needs don't dissolve, they echo in the subconscious. And so the nice child, now grown, may find themselves restless, unfulfilled, or strangely disconnected from their own inner world. They might struggle to answer simple questions like, what do you really want? Or, what do you truly feel? Because they've spent years training themselves not to look inward but outward. Here's where the data from psychology backs this up. Research on people-pleasing behavior shows strong correlations with higher anxiety, lower self-esteem, and difficulty asserting boundaries. Studies suggest that children who learn to suppress negative emotions to maintain harmony are more likely to experience internal stress later in life. It's as if the body keeps a quiet record of every time the child swallowed their truth. Let me pause here and ask you something. When you look back at your own childhood, do you remember moments when being good meant being silent? Do you recall times when your needs felt too big, too inconvenient, so you hid them behind a polite smile? If so, you might understand what it's like to carry the invisible armor of the nice child. And here's the hidden cost of that armor. Relationships that feel one-sided, careers that feel stuck, lives that feel smaller than they could be. Because the nice child grows up believing that their worth depends on staying agreeable. They hesitate to take risks, to voice opinions, to chase desires that might disrupt the peace. They live cautiously, carefully, always making sure they don't take up too much space. But life doesn't reward caution in the long run. It rewards authenticity. The world may applaud niceness, but what it truly responds to, what builds connection, intimacy, and impact, is truth. And truth cannot exist where fear of rejection controls the script. Now let me circle back to the question we left open. Why do so many nice children struggle later in life? The answer is because their niceness was never truly theirs. It was borrowed. It was shaped by external expectations. It was a mask they put on to protect themselves in a world where love felt conditional. And wearing a mask for too long eventually makes you forget the shape of your own face. But here's another curiosity loop to hold on to. If being a nice child can create so many invisible wounds, then how do we heal from it? How do we unlearn the patterns that once kept us safe but now keep us small? How do we step into kindness without being trapped by niceness? We'll explore that very question soon. But before we get there, let's go deeper into the psychology of why this pattern forms in the first place. Consider this. Every child studies their environment like a scientist. They notice what behaviors get rewarded and which ones get punished. If a child cries and is met with comfort, they learn that expressing pain is safe. If a child cries and is told, "Stop it, don't be dramatic," they learn that expressing pain is dangerous. Over time, these little lessons accumulate into a belief system. For the nice child, the belief is simple but powerful. Love is safest when I am pleasant. Love is secure when I am agreeable. Love disappears when I express too much of myself. And so the child begins to edit themselves. They become skilled at predicting what others want to hear. They become experts at reading moods, anticipating needs, smoothing over tension before it even arrives. These skills may look impressive, but they come at the cost of self-connection. Because while the child becomes fluent in the language of others, they grow silent in the language of themselves. This is why many nice children, even as adults, describe feeling like they don't know who they are. They know how to play roles, the good student, the helpful friend, the dependable partner. But when asked what they truly desire, they freeze. The script runs out, because the self beneath the niceness was never given enough room to grow. And maybe this is the most heartbreaking part of all. The nice child is often loved not for who they are, but for how well they erase themselves. The world praises them for their compliance, but overlooks their hidden longing to be seen in their fullness. Messy, loud, imperfect, and real. Yet, as heavy as this may sound, there is hope here, because what is learned can be unlearned, and what was once a survival strategy can be transformed into a strength, if we can understand it deeply enough. And that is where we will continue in the next part. So how does a nice child begin to heal? How does someone who grew up silencing themselves learn to rediscover their voice? The first step is awareness, because you cannot change a pattern you cannot see. And most nice children grow into adults who don't even realize they are still living by the same childhood rules. They think their constant giving, their reluctance to say no, their tendency to avoid conflict is simply who they are. But when you peel back the layers, you find it's not identity, it's conditioning. Awareness means asking questions. Questions like, do I say yes because I want to, or because I'm afraid of what will happen if I say no? Do I stay quiet because I agree, or because I fear rejection? Am I being kind, or am I being nice at the expense of myself? These questions shine a light on the hidden motivations behind our behavior, and once you begin asking them, it becomes harder to keep lying to yourself. But awareness alone is not enough. The second step is permission. Nice children rarely give themselves permission to want, to express, to disagree. For years they've lived with an inner censor that whispers, that's too much. Don't say that. Don't need that. Healing begins when you start granting yourself permission slips. Permission to rest without guilt. Permission to say no without apology. Permission to take up space without shrinking. This is easier said than done, because every time the nice child tries to assert themselves, an old fear rises up. The fear that love will vanish, that connection will be lost, that conflict will explode. And so the journey forward requires courage. Not the loud, dramatic kind of courage, but the quiet courage of saying, this matters to me, even if your voice trembles. The courage of disappointing someone and realizing the world doesn't end. The courage of being disliked and learning that you can still survive. There's a beautiful paradox here. The more the nice child learns to embrace their authentic self, even the parts that are messy, opinionated, or demanding, the more genuine their kindness becomes. Because real kindness does not come from fear, it comes from freedom. And when someone gives from a place of freedom, their generosity is deeper, their compassion is fuller, and their presence is more alive. Think of it like this. Imagine two people offering you a gift. One does it because they feel obligated, because they're afraid of upsetting you if they don't. The other does it because they genuinely want to, because it brings them joy. Which gift carries more weight? The second, of course. Authentic kindness has an energy that forced niceness can never replicate. But let's look even deeper into the psychology. Developmental research shows that children who are allowed to express the full range of emotions, joy, anger, sadness, frustration, grow up with stronger emotional regulation. They learn that feelings are not dangerous, they are signals. Meanwhile, children who are only rewarded for positive emotions often grow up struggling to navigate the negative ones. They become adults who panic when conflict arises, who feel overwhelmed by criticism, who shut down rather than speak up. And here's the irony. The nice child who spent their life avoiding conflict often ends up attracting more of it. Because when you never set boundaries, people inevitably cross them. When you always say yes, people start to expect it. When you suppress resentment, it leaks out in subtle ways. Passive aggression, withdrawal, sudden burnout. In trying to keep the peace, the nice child unknowingly creates the very tension they were trying to avoid. This leads us to another powerful curiosity loop. What happens when the nice child finally breaks? Because here's the truth. No one can wear the mask forever. At some point, the pressure of years of self-silencing builds to the point where it bursts. Sometimes this looks like an emotional breakdown. Sometimes it looks like a sudden outburst. Sometimes it looks like a quiet decision to walk away from relationships, jobs, or roles that have felt suffocating. The breaking point is often painful, but it can also be the beginning of something new, the birth of a truer self. But what if we didn't wait until the breaking point? What if we could guide the nice child, and the nice adult still living within us, toward healing before they collapse? That is where compassion comes in. Because the nice child doesn't need judgment, they need understanding. Their niceness was never a flaw, it was an intelligent adaptation. It was the child's way of surviving, of securing love, of making sense of a confusing world. When we see it this way, we stop blaming ourselves for being too nice, and instead start honoring the child who did what they had to do. And from that place of compassion, transformation becomes possible. Instead of saying, I shouldn't be this way, we can say, thank you for keeping me safe, but I don't need this armor anymore. That shift opens the door to authenticity. So let's imagine a new story. The nice child grows up. They still carry their natural empathy, their sensitivity to others, their gentle heart, but now they also carry a backbone. They say no when they mean no. They speak their truth without apology. They allow themselves to be loved not just for their pleasantness, but for their wholeness. The good, the bad, and the messy in between. This is not the end of niceness, but the evolution of it. It is niceness transformed into strength, into true kindness, into love that includes the self as much as it includes others. And maybe this is the message you need to hear today. That it is okay to stop being endlessly nice. That it is safe to let your voice shake as you say what you really mean. That you are allowed to want, to need, to take up space. That your worth is not dependent on being agreeable. It never was. Psychologists often speak about the importance of self-differentiation, the ability to stand as an individual while staying connected to others. This is the real challenge for the nice child. To learn that you can hold on to yourself without losing love, that you can disagree without being abandoned, that you can assert yourself without becoming unkind. It's a skill, one that can be built little by little, choice by choice. Perhaps the most healing realization of all is this. You are not here to be liked by everyone. You are here to live truthfully. Some people will celebrate that, some will not. But the people who truly matter, the ones capable of real connection, will only be drawn closer when you show up authentically. Because authenticity is magnetic. It creates trust. It builds intimacy. It speaks to the deepest part of us that longs to be seen. So if you were once the nice child, or if you still are, let this be a gentle reminder. Your niceness was never a weakness. It was a sign of your intelligence, your sensitivity, your adaptability. But now, you no longer need to shrink to be loved. You no longer need to erase yourself to belong. You are allowed to step out from behind the mask and take your place in the world, fully, unapologetically, and authentically. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real journey of life. Not to become perfect, not to become endlessly pleasant, but to become whole, to integrate the parts of us we once silenced, to let the child within us know, you are safe now, you are free to be yourself, and you will be loved, not for your niceness, but for your truth. So the next time you catch yourself saying yes when you want to say no, or smiling when you feel like crying, pause. Ask yourself, whose voice am I listening to? Is it the voice of the child who thought love depended on compliance? Or is it the voice of the adult who knows that real love embraces authenticity? That single pause could be the doorway back to yourself. And as you walk through that doorway, remember, kindness without authenticity is just performance. But kindness rooted in truth has the power to change lives, including your own. Because at the end of the day, the world doesn't need more nice children hiding their voices. It needs whole human beings, alive with their full spectrum of feelings, their full range of desires, their unfiltered authenticity. And maybe, if we can learn to give ourselves that freedom, we can finally offer the world the kind of kindness that heals, the kind that doesn't erase us, but includes us. And that is the story of the nice child, not a story of weakness, but of survival. Not a story of failure, but of transformation. And perhaps, if you listen closely, it's your story too.